Canada can kiss another $850 million goodbye, as Justin Trudeau has sent it down a path to be flushed away, actually probably to fund some sort of corruption at the WHO, which at this point is a propaganda outlet for the Communist Party of China, LARPing as a World Health Organization. Now, if you've watched a lot of my videos, you know I hate global institutions, right? I've detested the UN since, I don't know, maybe I was a toddler. However, I have said I'm not a complete destroy all these organizations wholeheartedly, complete withdrawal from the UN type of guy. But I have said, listen, the function of the UN can be a building for diplomats to meet, right? A building where every country in the world can have sort of a diplomatic representation there. I'm fine with that. A place for Canada and Algeria and Morocco to like talk, that's fine. But when you did global compacts on migration, no, toss it all out the window, because you can't have international bodies instituting rules and laws on people that they don't get to vote for. Like that's globalism. That I'm starkly opposed to. Another organization where I think globalization that could have a function, and that kind of should have a function, is actually the World Health Organization. There's a very good argument to be made for the World Health Organization, because in times like these, in massive pandemics, you need a world global body to sort of coordinate the efforts between different national governments, because, you know, countries can have different policies, but viruses, diseases don't, you know, respect borders. They just spread. They don't really care that, like, oh, that's Spain, that's Portugal, not crossing that line. So there is a function for the WHO. It can be a great asset in times of crisis like this. However, the World Health Organization on this particular situation has shown to be a massive detriment. It is doing more harm than good, because it is acting like a propaganda outlet for the government of China. They are ignoring basic common sense to push Chinese propaganda. They've done it consistently. The famous tweet from January 14th that there's no human-to-human spread of the coronavirus. A lie. China has said that they've had no more cases. They stopped at 83,000 cases over a month ago, and there's been no new cases of coronavirus. No one's called this out an obvious lie. An obvious lie. Right? So they were against travel bans from China until, you know, China instituted travel bans, and then it was fine. So we had the instant Canadian representative of the WHO on a Hong Kong television show when they asked, oh, what about Taiwan? And then he says, well, we already talked about China. Then he hung up. Right? So at every instance, it's shown that the WHO has been pushing the towing the line of the Chinese government. And I said, like, the WHO could do a function. Like, if this virus broke out in, you know, Bolivia, let's say, right, they probably would get on the ground and the Bolivian government would take their help, and we can all sort of coordinate a response. However, when it happens in China, or even an outbreak in a government that is allied with the Chinese, right, this communist dictatorship, and like probably Russia too exerts pressure, right? So when powerful authoritarian regimes are responsible for these viruses, well, then the WHO actually is counterproductive, because then it acts as a propaganda shield for these authoritarian governments instead of a World Health Organization. So listen, I can understand you need some sort of international CDC, but when that organization is more interested in pushing the propaganda lines of authoritarian regimes, they are no longer helping, they are now hurting. So Justin Trudeau has handed them $850 million. We don't have money in Canada, right? Our economy is about to our economy's been shut down. We're just throwing money out everywhere. And like, you can understand all that, fine. And I mean, we have hundreds of billions of dollars worth of debt. I mean, probably trillions if they did the accounting properly. It looks like the budget didn't balance itself. Who knew? But this is sort of Justin Trudeau's MO. And it's kind of shown that even in a pandemic, he can't sort of change his pathology. And I've been saying for a while, Justin Trudeau really looks like he is governing in a way that guarantees he will become a sort of global citizen, let's say. He is sort of ruling Canada in a way that he can go on a tour after he's done and talk to his support base, his biggest support base being Europeans and American leftists, right? He wants to sort of go on this world tour after he's done and be this global citizen and like, yeah, I did so much for the global institutions, and get all these speaking fees globally and be associated with the UN and be some sort of international representative to whatever, right? He's going after the Security Council seat. So that's what part one of his pathology is, sort of pushing his sort of international post-prime minister career of like international celebrity for the left. That's number one. Number two is, instead of sort of governing in the best interests of Canadians, he sort of reflexively does these sort of anti-Trump things, tries to play himself off as the anti-Trump to sort of capitalize again. I think it's part of this is sort of global leftist hate of Trump. He wants to be seen as Trump's foil. So when Trump, takes funding away from the WHO, he's like, you guys aren't helping, you're hurting right now, you're pushing Chinese communist propaganda, and we're giving you hundreds of millions of dollars? No, we're not going to fund you anymore if you're going to push Chinese propaganda. Like, we'll take care of ourselves. We'll use that money to help the American healthcare system if you're going to be hurting us, right? I'm all in favor of funding the WHO in a pandemic if they are helping. I am not in favor of funding the WHO if they are hurting, which they are actively harming Canada's and the world's ability to respond effectively to the coronavirus. And they are doing this by pushing the propaganda of an authoritarian communist regime in China. And they're prioritizing that over the health of people. So this is why we can't have nice things. So it becomes a hard argument to say. And people in the media are going to push this. Like, as Katie Telford said, they'll get people to push op-eds here. There'll be people, you'll start to hear these sort of Trudeau rights Trump's wrongs, right? They'll appeal to the anti-Trump base here in Canada, right? He's doing the anti-Trump type of thing. That will be sort of one of the things they'll push. And the other thing is they'll talk about, it's a pandemic and he's saving us from the pandemic by the WHO because, as you've seen, the CBC and the mainstream media has pushed back against anyone. I mean, when Derek Sloan criticized Theresa Tam for pushing Chinese propaganda through the WHO, right? They said, oh, this is racism. Everything's racism. So you'll see people who criticize this as racism, he's being the anti-Trump and, he's saving us or just ignoring it. And it's ridiculous. So, yes, we should defund the WHO because we need to set a precedent that if you're going to push authoritarian communist propaganda, you're not going to have an organization. There needs to be a global health organization, but that organization has to know that if they are in the pocket of one particular government, no other governments will fund it because then it's not serving its purpose. Because right now the World Health Organization is the World Chinese Propaganda Organization, and we shouldn't be funding that.